state of the franchise for the Washington football team. So the Washington football team finished up this 2020 NFL season with a 7-9 record. They won the NFC East division. They lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the wild card round. Washington surprised a lot of people this year. And I told a lot of people before the season began, if you guys have been subscribed to the channel back in August before week 1, I told everybody, I said Washington is going to be a lot better than what a lot of people think. And the so-called analysts had Washington going 3-13, 2-14. They felt like this was going to be a rebuilding year for Washington. And it's understandable. But I was telling people this. And I believe that my guy Juice Alert was also right on Washington with me. I believe I had Washington winning 8 games. I believe that he also had Washington winning 8 or 7 games. But we were both right about Washington. Now, in terms of Washington winning the NFC East, okay, I think it's fair to say that I don't really think anybody expected that to happen. But I did expect Washington to be a borderline playoff team, which my definition of a borderline playoff team is a team that could make it to the playoffs. They could not make it to the playoffs. It's 50-50. That's where I had Washington at. Now, I told everybody, I said, even though Washington's offense may not be great, which it wasn't this year, I feel like their defense was going to be good enough to carry them to at least 5 to 6 victories, which their defense was really good. As a matter of fact, it was one of the 3 best defenses in the NFL this year. In my opinion, I think it was the 2nd best defense in the NFL behind the Los Angeles Rams. A big reason why I was hiring Washington was because first you hired Ron Rivera. And I said, listen, Ron Rivera is a great hire. You want to know why? Because Ron Rivera taking the Washington job, he has the pieces to win and have success in Washington right away, which he did. And the reason why I said that was because when you look at what Ron Rivera's philosophy is, he relies on the defense to win the game. He doesn't really care about the offense all that much. Not saying he doesn't care about offense at all, but all he needs is for the offense to take care of the football, not turn the football over, and, somewhat be able to put some points on the board because the defense is pretty much going to do the rest. And if you know anything about Ron Rivera, you know that Ron Rivera is a guy who is really good at, developing the front 7 of a defense. When you look at what he did in Carolina, it took him a couple of years to build up that front 7 in Carolina to his liking. Well, in Washington already had one of the best front 7s in the NFL. Well, one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. You had Jonathan Allen, you had Payne, you had Ryan Kerrigan, who we didn't really get to see play a full season because he suffered a season-ending injury early on in the year. You had Chase Young. You had Montez Sweat. I mean, you had an all-star caliber defensive line in Washington. So Ron Rivera already took over a team that was to his liking, that fit his philosophy, what he wants to do as a head coach. And that's why Washington's success this year, to me, was not that big of a surprise. Like a lot of the so-called experts had Washington going 3-13, 4-12, had Washington winning between 7 or 8 games, and they lived up to my level of expectations. So moving forward, what does Washington need to do to take that next step? Because obviously the 2 best teams in this division, well, the 2 teams that have the brightest futures in this division are the New York Giants and the Washington football team. Simply for the fact that you look at Philadelphia, what's going on with their organization right now. They have a lot of turmoil in that front office. They just got rid of Doug Peterson. They just hired a new head coach. They have a lot of bad contracts. They don't really have a lot of cap space. Same thing with the Dallas Cowboys. So you look at the New York Giants and you look at Washington and what both those 2 franchises have done in the first year of new head coaches. You look at what New York has done with Joe Judge. You look at what Washington has done their first year of Ron Rivera. I think it's fair to say that the 2 teams who are going to be competing back and forth for NFC East supremacy are going to be the Giants and the Washington football team. Now, for Washington, obviously, you don't really have that many holes on defense. I would like to see Washington improve the linebacker position, which is really, really holding back that defense from becoming, the best defense in the NFL. Like, linebacker needs a major overhaul this offseason. I also would like to see them, maybe make a few acquisitions to improve the secondary, but I don't think the secondary is all that bad to the point like it's not serviceable. But I really feel like the linebacker position is one of the biggest must improves heading into the offseason for Washington. Now, on the offensive side of football, the offensive line. Now, Washington fans will tell me the offensive line is not that bad like you make it out to be, JT, which is true. The offensive line did improve tremendously in the second half of the year, but also I still feel like you don't want to head into next year, passing over offensive linemen when you could have the opportunity to get better in that department. Because one thing that you don't want to go cheap with is the offensive line, because at the end of the day, the game is won and lost in the trenches. And if you're not good up front, and you're just average, you're not going to make it far. The teams who make it the furthest in the playoffs are the teams that have better offensive line play. So if you're watching, yes, your offensive line may be good to get you to the playoffs, but it's not going to be good enough to have a deep postseason run. So therefore, I think Washington should look to improve the offensive line just a little bit. I'm not saying the offensive line needs a major overhaul. I'm just saying just add a piece or there to, shore up the offensive line, make it a little bit better. Now, the wide receiver position, I'm not really going to fret over the wide receiver position for Washington, because at the end of the day, what's most important is that you have a true number one wide receiver in Terry McLaurin, who a lot of people were really sleeping on this year. I said that before the season began that Terry McLaurin could have a Pro Bowl caliber year, which he did this year. Now, Logan Thomas was a pretty big surprise with how productive he was at the tight end position for Washington. Antonio Gibson was also pretty good and pretty productive. I think that he should be in the Offensive Rookie of the Year discussion, even though we know that Justin Herbert is going to win that award. But you also should put Antonio Gibson in that conversation. He should be one of the finalists because he had a really good season as well as a rookie in terms of what he was able to do when he was finally able to become the full workload back down in Washington. So the wide receiver position, okay, maybe you could figure out if you want to bring in the number 2 wide receiver. I don't think Marvin Jones would be that bad of a pickup. He's 30 years old, but he's kind of like what Emmanuel Sanders was for New Orleans. You don't need Emmanuel Sanders to be your number 1 wide receiver. You just need him to come in and be your number 2 wide receiver. So I think Marvin Jones would be a really good fit there. Now, when it comes to the quarterback position, okay, you have Alex Smith. We don't really know what's going to happen when it comes to the quarterback position. Is Alex Smith going to come back? Does Washington feel comfortable bringing Alex Smith back for one more year? I also have seen some Cam Newton rumors. My guy, Juice Alert, me and him were going back and forth on should Washington trade for Matthew Stafford, which I don't think is a bad trade, but I would like Washington to probably try to draft a young quarterback in this year's draft if one comes available, because where Washington is picking at in the NFL draft, they're picking in like the middle to like the late part of the first round. So you're not going to have the opportunity to get a guy like a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence or Zach Wilson, but you are going to be in a position that maybe you could draft Mac Jones, Kyle Trask, depending on how much you like those guys. But overall, I don't think it would be bad if Washington was to trade for Matthew Stafford. I understand it. I really don't want to see Washington trade or pick up Cam Newton. Like, I understand Cam Newton and Ron Rivera have a connection because they both were really good when they were both on Carolina. But I think Cam Newton at this point, he's 31 years old. His body is breaking down. Cam Newton's strength was never his ability to throw the football. His strength was what he was able to do running the football. And when you look at Cam Newton and him becoming 31 years old, he's starting to become less effective as a runner for the simple fact that you can't trust him to stay healthy. So I'm not really that big of a fan of Cam Newton going to the Washington football team. I think Alex Smith is a better quarterback than what Cam Newton is at this point in his career. So I would either like to see Washington trade for Matthew Stafford or keep Alex Smith for one more year until they're able to find another quarterback who could become his successor when he ends up stepping down. Now, overall, Washington is in a very good spot. I think Washington is going to end up running this division for at least next year or so because New York has a little bit more problems that they have to fill up. So I have a lot more confidence in Washington in terms of them being able to repeat as back-to-back division champions, because you look at how good that defensive line is, you look at how good that defense is, and you look at how good that defense could be if they improve the linebacker position. So if they're able to improve that linebacker position, watch out, because Washington is probably going to have the best defense in the NFL next year, and that's coming from a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. You look at Ron Rivera, he has assembled a pretty good coaching staff as well. So for Washington, if you are a Washington fan, you have to be feeling really good about where the direction of this franchise is heading. And Ron Rivera wasn't just a good hire because this was the perfect team for him, but also Ron Rivera was the perfect head coach to turn around a franchise that has had a lot of, accusations when it comes to their owner, Dan Snyder, a lot of instability in the front office. With Ron Rivera there, he's a guy who's not going to tolerate any of that nonsense going on in the front office, especially with his daughter working there. So I wasn't too worried about that. Yes, Dan Snyder may be the worst owner in the NFL, but as long as Dan Snyder does what he's supposed to do, just be the owner, just overlook the team, make sure nothing terribly wrong is going on with the franchise, then he's good. All he needs to do is sit back and let Ron Rivera do the rest, and that's what he's doing right now. So for Washington, if you are a Washington football team fan, even though you do have Dan Snyder as your owner, you have Ron Rivera as your head coach. And Ron Rivera is a culture builder. This is what Ron Rivera specializes in. He specializes in, building a good locker room, building up the culture and the connection that the players are going to have in the locker room. And players love playing for Ron Rivera. So you have like a brotherly love atmosphere in that locker room for Washington. So I'm really excited to watch what the future has in store for Washington. Let me know what you guys think about the Washington football team down in the comment section down below. Make sure that you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and content, and thanks for watching.